For 5 years, I believed it was love. But the moment that crimson thread of fate unraveled, what lay before my eyes was hell. My husband and his stepmother, entangled in the same bed, lost in a depraved ecstasy, devouring each other's bodies. A suffocating betrayal, the prelude to a grotesque and sticky desire. This shocking audiobook will immerse you in a truth so vile, you'll question everything. Subscribe and hit like to hear this story of unspeakable betrayal. His warmth had long vanished from our cold bed. The space he once occupied felt like a bottomless well, its emptiness carving into my heart, leaving behind a glacial chill. Ever since his father passed, my husband had been living at his stepmother's house. He claimed she was scared and lonely, left all alone. At first, I believed him. The nights I'd fallen asleep leaning against his back were still vivid, making me see him as endlessly tender and affectionate. But as 5 seasons turned, his footsteps seemed to have utterly forgotten the way home. Time, tethered to my wrist, felt as though it had stopped with him, and waking up alone. Each dawn was like a shard of ice piercing my heart. Every night, I was tormented by the phantom scent of a stranger clinging to my bedsheets. It wasn't his familiar scent, not the one I knew so intimately. This was something sticky and cloying, a decadent aroma that could only cling to someone fresh from a secret tryst. He would occasionally come home, but his gaze no longer truly met mine. Like a deep, dark abyss, it held a shadowy secret I couldn't fathom. Instead of piercing through me, his eyes seemed to stare off into a distant, hazy place. As if I had become invisible to him. Strangers would whisper, observing his affectionate gestures and her tender glances, remarking how they looked like a couple. Those unfamiliar stares turned into daggers, piercing my heart. A casual comment from a woman at the market, a snippet of overheard gossip at a cafe, each was a poisoned blade, tearing through my insides. Anxiety, like a black vine, began to consume me, erupting nightly in nightmares that tormented my sleep. The strange scent on the man I loved, his eyes that had drifted so far away. All of it created tiny fissures, cracks that slowly widened, threatening to become a catastrophic earthquake that would shatter the very foundation of my life. He wouldn't come home, claiming he had to comfort his mother's loneliness late into the night. His phone remained perpetually connected to hers, even in the dead of night. Their conversations a secret incantation, a realm forbidden to me. Alone in the dark, I waited for his return. Every night, the shadows stretching across our empty house felt like demons, gnawing at my soul. The man in our wedding photo, hanging on the wall, now looked like a complete stranger. It was agonizing to imagine what sweet lies those once tender lips, smiling in the picture, might now be whispering. The suspicion boiling inside me raged like volcanic lava, ready to erupt at any moment. This house was no longer a place where love resided. It had become a vast prison, filled with cold, sticky doubt. His absence was a black hole, devouring all peace from my heart. His silence wasn't understanding, their affection was a sinister omen. I knew the sharp shards of truth lay scattered beneath my feet, but I lacked the courage to step on them. I was terrified to face the truth. I couldn't take it anymore. The doubt within me swelled like a colossal wave, threatening to swallow me whole. His warmth, long gone and cold, his empty space in our bed, and the unfamiliar scents that clung to my sheets each night, they stabbed at my heart like knives. I instinctively knew all of this was a colossal deception, yet I couldn't bring myself to close my eyes to it. Finally, I headed towards my stepmother's house. My steps felt heavy, as if weighted with lead, and my heart hammered an erratic rhythm. The blaring car horns on the road, the murmurs of passers-by, none of it reached my ears. The entire world seemed to have drained into shades of gray, leaving only her house, glowing eerily red, a beacon of terror. At the end of the familiar alley, the gate of the detached house loomed into view. The chilling night air seeped deep into my lungs, yet my forehead was slick with cold sweat. My hands trembled so violently I couldn't even contemplate ringing the doorbell. Instead, I pressed myself against the gate like a shadow. At that very moment, a sticky, low chuckle seeped out from the gap. In the bedroom window, where a faint light glowed, it sounded like the growl of a hungry beast, or perhaps the coquettish moans of a woman lost in pleasure. That sound ensnared my ankles. Like a butterfly caught in a spiderweb, I found myself unable to escape. I crouched down, cautiously peering through the window gap. The old room was shrouded in darkness, but beneath the faint orange glow of a bedside lamp, a shocking scene unfolded. On the rumpled bedsheets, two naked figures were entangled, devouring each other's bodies. His back was clearly marked with red bruises from her touch, and her limp hair writhed like snakes over his shoulders. Her fingers traced delicate patterns on his skin, making his body tremble minutely with each caress. Her laughter, drenched in pleasure, echoed grotesquely. A rhythmic sound, like an old clockwork mechanism, filled the air. The creak of the bedsprings, the sticky slap of flesh against flesh, and his low moans. All of these sounds merged, tearing through my eardrums. Desire, spreading like red wine, enveloped their bodies. Their eyes gleamed like wild beasts, filled with a ferocious madness, as if they sought to devour each other. His lips moved intoxicatingly along the curve of her neck, and her fingernails left crimson marks on his back, like swollen veins. I froze on the spot, unable to even breathe, my lungs filled with cold air. But a sickening surge of hot blood rushed through me, paralyzing my entire body. Their appearance was more horrific than hell itself. Everything I had believed was love turned to ashes in an instant. What formed in my eyes was no longer love. It was cold betrayal, a dreadful truth that shattered my life completely. My heart cried out in agony, tearing into 1,000 pieces, and I desperately wished this entire scene was a dream. But the sticky moans and pleasure-drenched laughter, echoing in my ears, relentlessly reminded me that this was all a cruel reality. I was rooted to the floor, unable to move, as if my feet were buried. Every nerve in my body was on edge, absorbing their every movement and sound. This suffocating moment felt like an eternity. My voice erupted in a scream, ripped from my very core. Since when? Just when did this start? My existence-announcing shriek shattered the space consumed by their pleasure. My voice was hot like boiling lava, piercing their ears like a cold dagger. Her gaze, languidly draped over his body, slowly, ever so slowly, turned toward me. There wasn't a shred of guilt in her eyes. Instead, there was a mocking leisure, no, a smug sense of victory. Her lips were red and swollen, and a suggestive smile played across her face. It was a cruel smile, as if a long-held plan had finally come to fruition. He slowly detached himself from her body and rose, his disheveled hair, his forehead glistening with sweat, and his flushed face clearly betrayed the lingering traces of pleasure. His naked body felt like that of a stranger before my eyes. The realization that the body I loved had been so grotesquely defiled in another woman's embrace made me feel as if I was spitting blood. He spoke to me, utterly nonchalant, as if nothing out of the ordinary had occurred. His voice was unsettlingly calm, and that very calmness cut deeper into my heart. Since high school, his answer came without a flicker of hesitation. His utterly matter-of-fact demeanor, as if stating an obvious truth, shattered my heart into a million pieces. I fought back the rising nausea, leaning against the wall. My body felt as if it had been plunged into boiling water. Yet my heart was simultaneously frozen solid. My mind went blank, filled only with his voice, coiling like a serpent in my ears. Since high school, those 3 words shook the very core of my life. Every moment I had met him, whispered love, dreamed of a future, and planned our wedding. All of it crumbled into a lie in an instant. Clutching the bedsheets, she answered my question with a derisive laugh. Her eyes gleamed like a hungry hyena's. Is that what you want to know? The way we love is something a lowly creature like you could never comprehend. Her cold voice sliced through my flesh like a knife. Lowly creature. That single word from her lips brazenly revealed her arrogant attitude, treating me like vermin. Her laughter echoed in my ears like a cruel, mocking reverberation. She seemed to savor her victory with smug satisfaction. Her eyes were like a deep, dark mire, and I was merely a small creature floundering within it. Her hand once again stroked his shoulder, and he naturally nestled his head into her embrace. Their intertwined figures writhed before my eyes like repulsive vipers. The sweet scent that once emanated from my beloved husband's body had now morphed into a sickening, foul stench, suffocating me. I couldn't move an inch from them. My feet were cemented to the floor, my body trembling minutely like shattering glass. Their indifferent, cold gazes treated me as if I were transparent. In that moment, I painfully realized I was nothing to them. My marriage, my love, my very existence had merely been a facade to conceal their dirty, long-held secret. Darkness deepened over their naked bodies, and within its shadows, their smiles glowed even more bizarrely and menacingly. My screams no longer held any meaning. I was howling alone amidst the shattered fragments of my own self. I shifted my gaze between their eyes. My husband's stare was vacant, while my stepmother's eyes, like black lakes, brimmed with deep, unknowable emotions. Their gazes were intertwined like ancient, coiled snakes, leaving no room for me to squeeze in. Their world had utterly excluded me. It was as if an invisible glass wall surrounded them. Clutching the rumpled bedsheets, my husband continued to speak, as if enacting a scene from a play, his voice hoarse but laced with a strange emotional tremor. She was the savior who came in place of my sick mother. My father was always a cold man. Obsessed with his business, he spent more time outside the house than in it. After my mother died, he placed even greater expectations on me, and I felt like I was suffocating under that oppression. That's when she arrived. His gaze turned to her, and she stroked his hand with a satisfied smile. Her touch felt cold and slippery, like a snake's scales. My father tried to control my every move, and each time, she stood by me. She was the only one who truly understood me under my father's harsh scrutiny. His words were filled with twisted logic. A savior? Understanding? It wasn't love. It was a fatal temptation, drawing him in like a swamp. She was devouring his body, yes, but at the same time, she was manipulating his very soul. Her eyes flickered subtly as she listened to him speak, like the master of a thoroughly tamed beast. My marriage, no, my very existence, had merely been an impediment to them. 5 years of time, every moment I believed was love, turned to ashes in an instant. Even when I held his hand, happy, even when I lay in his arms dreaming sweet dreams, he was already in the embrace of another woman. All of it was a lie. His whispered words of love, his warm gaze, his sweet kisses. All of it had been nothing but a mask, and behind that mask lay a repulsive, hideous truth. Their relationship transcended mere lust. It was a sticky, complicated, incomprehensible mix of obsession and twisted affection. Like a long-aged poison, their secret had consumed everything about me. Even when his father was alive, they must have been dancing a hidden waltz of desire. His father's death had merely granted them freedom without guilt. I was utterly an outsider, alienated within their twisted love. They exchanged covert smiles, gazing at each other. Those smiles pierced my heart like blood-soaked blades. In their eyes, I saw my future shattering into countless pieces. The man I loved, the man I thought I knew, no longer existed. He was merely a puppet trapped in her grasp. All hope within me flared like crimson flames, then turned to ash. 5 years of my life became as meaningless as dust scattered in the wind. And the future I dreamed of was shattered, its sharp fragments embedded in my heart like broken mirror shards. This horrific, nauseating truth was a venom consuming my very soul. I couldn't even breathe where I stood. My lungs filled with cold air, but hot tears streamed down my cheeks. Their story wasn't just a simple affair. It was a history of twisted affection and obsession that had germinated since childhood, and I was merely the tragic sacrifice of that history. Their eyes radiated the arrogance of victors towards me. I was nothing more than an uninvited guest, privy to a scene in their play. The realization that all of this was lies and pretense felt as though it negated my very existence. I snatched the teacup from the bedside table and hurled it to the floor. Crash! The sharp shattering sound ripped through the stillness, echoing through the house. The fragments scattered like my own shattered heart. The shards of the teacup lay strewn on the floor, mirroring my splintered hopes. Divorce. The word tasted bitter on my lips. The letters, swirling on my tongue, were as acrid as old poison. My mind screamed that ending all of this was the right thing to do. My reason had already given up everything, yet my feet remained rooted to the floor, as if nailed down. My body trembled uncontrollably, entangled in a mess of rage, despair, and an inexplicable lingering attachment. 5 years of marriage, the future I dreamed of, the feelings I believed were love. All of it shattered into a million pieces in an instant. The husband I loved didn't exist. All his tenderness had been a mask, and behind it lurked the shadow of a repulsive desire. His eyes no longer held love. They were cold and numb, the eyes of a stranger I didn't know. Even the familiar scent that once emanated from him now felt like the sickening stench of a lie. My pride was torn to shreds, and my soul cried out, spitting blood. The rage boiling up from the depths of my chest consumed me like a raging inferno. In that blaze, I felt myself turning into a handful of ashes. Even if I divorced, this wound would never heal. This scar, carved into my soul, would haunt me, tormenting me for the rest of my life. How could I go on living in this hideous reality? Every compass of my life seemed broken, and I felt like a lost child, wandering aimlessly. I couldn't avoid their intertwined gazes. Their eyes gleamed like predators spotting their prey, and under their stare, I felt utterly violated. My stepmother's sticky gaze mocked me, and my husband's indifferent eyes cast me into the abyss of despair. The ominous shadows cast by their entangled bodies seemed to engulf me. They said nothing, yet their silence felt laden with countless accusations and taunts. That silence pierced my ears like a sharp, lingering dagger. Their images in my eyes gradually blurred. Tears obscured my vision, but simultaneously, I realized my world was collapsing endlessly around me. My future faded like a ship disappearing into the fog, and I felt as precarious as someone standing on the edge of a cliff. The sound of my entire life's foundation crumbling echoed in my ears. My heart grew as cold as ice, and my body was consumed by an emptiness, as if hollowed out. I could no longer breathe. Divorce was never an easy choice. It was a brutal process of dismantling my entire life and starting everything from scratch. But if I didn't end this tragic play, I would forever suffer in their shadow. My hands trembled, and my heart writhed in agonizing pain, tearing into 1,000 pieces. This desperate night felt like it would never end. The moment everything you called love sheds its cruelest mask, your world will crumble forever.